Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The regular stated meeting of the City Council of Morganton will now resume for business, April 6, 2015. This time, I'll call on Forrest Fleming, our City Councilman, to lead us with our Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Join with me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and please be seated.
Introduction of our City Council. On my far right is Ronnie Thompson, City Councilman. Forrest Fleming, City Councilman. Louis Vini, our City Attorney. I'm Mel Cohen, your Mayor. We have Scott Hildebrand, our Assistant City Manager, in the place of Sally Sandy. Sidney Simmons, City Councilman. John Cantrell, City Councilman. Kelly Russell, Recording Secretary. And Becky Brinkley, interpreting for our deaf community. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here. We've got a good crowd. At this time, I'm going to call on Larry Wisnett to come forward.
No, you forgot the invocation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, invocation. Pastor, Reverend Jesse Carr, Walker Road Baptist Church.
Mr. Mayor.
Not to overlook you, I'm sorry.
And members of the council, let me extend to you my appreciation for letting me come and pray with you tonight. Let's pray together. Our Heavenly Father, Lord, we approach your throne tonight in the name of your Son, the Lord Jesus. And Father, we are exceedingly thankful this evening that we are welcome to come before your throne through Christ. And Father, through the fact that he died for our sins and rose again to give us his life. Lord, we are thankful tonight that we are able to call this great city home and that we are able to live here and work here and play here and worship here. And Father, I pray for your blessings now upon this meeting. And Father, I pray that you would accomplish your purposes and your will in those that will govern tonight and the decisions that they make and then those that will present. Father, we know that we are often very short-sighted. We are often very misguided. But Father, I pray that even in our shortcomings, you would accomplish your purpose so that every person that calls Morganton home would be blessed and so that our city would become even greater. Father, I pray that you would accomplish your purpose here this evening, and I pray that in doing that, you would make sure that the needs of every person that lives here and every person that works here and those that serve our city through government and those that serve in other capacities, Lord, I pray that through the meeting tonight, their needs would be taken care of. Father, we also come to you tonight and confess that we are sinful and that we are fallen and that we need forgiveness through Christ. So, Father, I pray that you'd forgive us individually and forgive us as churches and forgive us in our homes, Lord, where we have not honored you and honored your Son the way that he deserves. And, Father, we seek forgiveness through him. And, Father, we're thankful for the forgiveness that is offered us through Jesus. And, Father, I pray tonight that you would bless this great city, Lord, spiritually, financially, materially. Help us to be good stewards of the many resources that you have given us. And, Father, I ask that tonight in the name of Jesus, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, world without end. And amen.
Thank you, Pastor. You're welcome to stay, but if you have other important business, you can leave anytime. Thank you. Thank you again. I gave the introduction. Retire. Larry Wisner. Larry is a 16-year veteran of our Morganton City Council and has a few words he would like to say to us.
First told me to introduce myself because of my advanced age, people might not recognize me. He's advanced as well, I might add. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you and the council for allowing me to come here tonight and read the resolution for my friend Jack Parks' retirement. I've known Jack for 35 years, and during that period, I have come to value his friendship highly. And those of you that know Jack know that if you're a friend, you're always going to be a friend. And they also know you always know where you stand with Jack. He has a unique personality and character. And I could speak a lot about that, but I won't, because I think I can sum all this up about Jack and his service to the city of Morganton in about 3 words as to how he did serve this city, and that was with integrity and responsibility and dedication. And that's why I respect and care for Jack Parks. Now, this resolution honoring Henry Jackson Parks. Whereas Henry Jack Parks was employed by the city of Morganton as a mechanic 1 in the garage department on March the 3rd, 1986, promoted to garage superintendent on August the 8th, 1988, changed to equipment service superintendent on September 16th, 1999, reclassified as equipment service supervisor on July 1, 2004, and whereas Henry Jackson Jack Parks has faithfully served the city of Morganton in the Public Works Equipment Services Department and has given of his time and efforts for the benefit of the citizens of Morganton for 30 years, 1 month, and whereas Henry Jackson Jack Parks retired from the city of Morganton as Equipment Service Supervisor in the Public Works Equipment Services Department on February 1, 2015. And whereas the City of Morganton Council wishes to officially recognize the contributions of Henry Jackson Jack Parks and express their appreciation for a job well done. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Morganton that the mayor present this resolution to Henry Jackson Jack Parks, adopted this second day of February 2015, Mail L. Cohen, Mayor, Sally Sandy, City Clerk. Now, I don't know if Jack's going to say anything or not, but I've never known him not to want to say
Well, you
something.
stand there for a second, and Jack, if you would come up there and stand next to him, and Joshua, did you take a picture of these two? I did not. Would you?
You need to make your motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution honoring Henry Jackson Jack Parks.
Second.
Have a motion, have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Go ahead. We've already done this.
All right, 1, 2, 3, G. 1, 2, 3, G.
It's a wonder it'll make.
Jack, let me tell you something. The reason I wanted him to do it, your name was so long, and I would mess it up.
Yeah.
And I knew if I let him practice all day, he would mess it up.
Yeah.
You've given us
Well,
a great, great deal of your life, and we greatly appreciate it. The microphone is yours if you want to say anything.
Don't have much to say other than Larry probably stretched it a little bit, but anyway, after 35 years, he ought to get my name right. I thank you, thank everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Jack.
Jack, very few people work 30 years at any one job these days. Presentation of pins, neither one of the two individuals are here. We have Mike Crotch, Development Design Chief Building Inspector, 20 years. Scott will give it to him tomorrow. And Marty Ollis, Water Resources Senior Plant Operator, wastewater, 25 years. And Scott will make sure he gets that. All right, we're going to move into public advocacy issues and strategies. And what I'd like to do first is ask Mr. Kawada and Mr. Kale to please come to the podium if you would. I'm going to get back on the page. I'm pleased to present to Viscotech's President Koji Kawada and Executive Vice President Jeff Kale this credit of $25,000 on their power bill for their company's recently completed lighting upgrade. Viscotech has been participating in the lighting rebate program offered by the City of Morganton and Electricities. The program recognizes companies that invest in newer, more efficient lighting that saves both the customer and the City of Morganton. Viscotech has been part of our community for going on 13 years, I believe, and has constantly demonstrated good corporate citizenship by investing not only in new production equipment, but also new approaches to production. And we greatly appreciate that. And they also have invested in an environmental equipment in the form of solar energy. Their solar park is absolutely beautiful. In recognition of Viscotech's initiative to reduce energy costs, I'm pleased to present this credit of $25,000 to Viscotech President Koji Kawada and Executive Vice President Jeff Kale. This is our first venture in to do something like this, and we greatly appreciate y'all being here and doing this for us. We're very proud of Viscotech and all that they represent. Y'all are welcome to say anything.
Mayor and council members, I would like to say on behalf of Viscotech, thank you very much for this rebate. This shows our strong commitment also in the investment we made to remain here long-term in Morganton, North Carolina. We feel a very strong partnership with the city. Morganton's been good for Viscotech, and we hope Viscotech is good for Morganton. So again, thank you very much, and we appreciate your support.
Thank you, Jeff. Coach, give my best regards to your dad, if you would, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, Paige Pitts. Paige, if you want to come to the podium. I'm going to read the Mayor's Day of Recognition for National Service. And Paige Pitts, Senior Corps Director of the J. Iverson Riddle Developmental Center, will receive the resolution. Whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character and central to how we meet our challengers. And whereas the nation's mayors are increasingly turning to national service and volunteerism as a cost-effective strategy to meet city needs. And whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps address the most pressing challenges facing our cities and nations, from educating students for the jobs of the 21st century and supporting veterans and military families to preserve the environment and helping communities recover from national disasters. And whereas national service expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve. And whereas national service participants serve in more than 70,000 locations across America, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being. And whereas national service participants increase the impact of the organizations they serve with, both through their direct service and by recruiting and managing millions of additional volunteers. And whereas national service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources to strengthen community impact and increase the return on taxpayers' dollars. And whereas AmeriCorps members and Senior Corps volunteers demonstrate commitment, education, dedication, and patriotism for making an intensive commitment to service, a commitment that remains with them in their future endeavors. And whereas the Corporation of National and Community Service shares a priority with mayors nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining the National League of Cities, City of Service, and mayors across the country to recognize the impact of service on the Mayor's Day of Recognition for National Service on April 9, 2013. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mel Cohen, Mayor of the City of Morganton, do hereby proclaim April 7, 2015 as National Service Recognition Day and encourage residents to recognize the positive impact of national service to our city and thank those who serve and to find ways to give back to their communities. Signed this, the 6th day of April 2015, Mel Cohen, Mayor, Sally Sandy, City Clerk. Making the form of a motion, guys.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Paige, you're welcome. I'm out of breath, so you're
Okay.
welcome.
I want to say thank you to you and the councilman for recognizing this program. I appreciate that. And we, the Senior Corps in Burke County is, in Morganton, has been around for 50 years. A lot of people don't realize that we're the foster grandparent program, and we serve Burke County and 4 surrounding counties. We have about 65 volunteers, and they're all seniors. And seniors now, according to foster grandparents, is 55 and above. But we really appreciate the fact that this community has supported this program for so long. J. Iverson Riddle is our host for the federal grant program, which is the National Service program, and we put seniors in the elementary schools, and they help special needs students one-on-one, help to bring them up into their reading levels and to some of their other math levels. We help them in the Head Starts. We also help some of the residents at J. Iverson Riddle. So I just want to thank you so much, because I feel like that our volunteers, they're kind of the unsung heroes. They're low-income seniors that we recruit from this community, and on their behalf, I say thank you very much.
Thank you, Paige, for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please thank them for us. John Krebs? Staff Archaeologist, Exploring Jawara Foundation Incorporated.
Good evening. While I try to pull up this PowerPoint,
We're on our way, brother.
Greg to the rescue.
thanks.
Whoops. There we go.
Great. Good evening. Let's try this one more time. My name is John Krebs, and I'm the staff archaeologist for the Exploring Jawara Foundation. Very quickly, the Jawara Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit housed here in Morganton that was created in 2007 as part of the outreach arm of the Berry site excavations that are being led by Warren Wilson College. For those of you not familiar with the Berry site, it is a nationally significant archaeological site in our backyard. This is the site of Fort San Juan and Jawara, a Native American village that was established by the Spanish 20 years before Roanoke and 40 years before Jamestown. So this nationally significant site was recently featured in Discover magazine, a very top science magazine, as one of the top science stories of 2013. Number one was the potential for life on Mars. I like to think about the science project here as just being a few steps below the potential for life on Mars. So this last year, we actually hosted nearly 500 people at our annual Berry Site Field Day. We've been hosting a field day out there for years now, and you regularly see hundreds of people come into the county and visit just to see the site. The discovery of Fort San Juan in 2013 was a major explosive thing for our organization, which has been great. But we've been partnered with the city with our lease agreement at Catawba Meadows for some time. I wanted to let you guys know about our EJF summer camp program, of which what I'm about to talk about next is actually here and featured in one of these photos. So these summer camp kids actually come from all over the country and beyond. In the top left picture, the boy standing at the screen is actually from Puerto Rico. So these kids come from all over because there's no other program like it in the United States. There's only really one, and they're on a completely different scale. So we also bring them around to sites in the city and beyond. So you can see where we took them up to Brown Mountain to go looking for the Brown Mountain lights. Unfortunately, I have to say we didn't see any that night. So it's a great program. The next is that we have an internship program that we've started in the last few years. And Catherine Matthews, if you wouldn't mind standing for me, is my lab intern. She's now so well trained in my lab that she actually trains other high school students. Our EJF programming has grown to such significant amounts that when I started, we had roughly one program a month. Now I have 5 a week at a minimum. You guys have our impact report and can see the numbers for how many we see regularly. And if anyone would like an additional copy of our impact report, we have some here. So we see kids from all over the county and beyond. I actually have a school group coming from Asheville this week. We bring them to Catawba Meadows, where they get to learn to do traditional games, where they get to try and learn what life was like 500 years ago living in Burke County. You can see that we get lots of different types of students. One of the big students that we keep having more of from Western Piedmont Community College's Educational Talent Search. These are students during the summer that join in with our summer camp program and other programs, so it all kind of tiers together. But our biggest move this year has been the hiring of our executive director, Marie Palacios. Marie, would you mind joining me? I'd like to introduce formally Marie Palacios as our executive director. Many of you have met and known me over the last 3 years that I've been here, but I'd like to let Marie have a chance to say just something.
Good evening. It's such a privilege to be with you here tonight. As a Morganton native who moved away at age 7, I'm happy to have moved back home simply to be a part of the exciting work that's being done by the Exploring Jawara Foundation. And I know that in the few months I've been on board, I've seen how important the partnership with the City of Morganton, the residents of this community and surrounding communities is to this significant discovery and the education that's involved in that. So I just wanted to thank you formally for your support, let you know that I'm here to serve, willing and able. If you just need anything at all, we're happy to extend a hand and also learn how we can partner better with the city to educate members of our community about this significant find.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I always end with that, but I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Okay, we have RP3. Brooks? Reliable public power. Brooks, I'm going to present this to you, and then let you tell us a little bit about it and how many years we've had this award.
I'll not take long. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Scott, Kelly. Also, this award is given by the American Public Power Association in recognizing towns and cities that move their electrical department to be more reliable, to be more safety, to be more technologically minded. And as such, the City of Morganton this is our 5th award. It's given out every 2 years, and we've got it now for the last 10 years. And as such, it's a recognition of 2 things. Number 1 is the city electrical department employees' dedication and determination in doing the best job that they can. And also number 2, to the city council, who votes to give us the funds to be able to do our jobs as best as we can. And as such, I'd like to thank my crews, my staff, and also each one of the members of the council for your continued support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brooks. Appreciate it very much. Let me give you some other good news. Durley Fabrics and Manufacturing is a company that is in the old Carolina Shoe Building on Hopewell Road, and they've been in Morganton probably 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And they have merged taken their facility out of New York and Long Island, and are bringing the entire facility down here to merge into this plant in Morganton. They'll have 64 jobs for Burke County people to apply for. The president of the company will be down here next week, and Alan Wood and myself and Sally will be going out to talk to him. There are going to be some incentives that the State Commerce Department will be probably working with them on. We're looking forward to these additional jobs and additional furniture and fabric jobs for Burke County. That's something that News Herald needs to jump on. Sir. Saluda, North Carolina. Saluda, it was an article that Scott got off of the Asheville Citizens about their branding. I think we had some people that were, when Ed Phillips was here talking about our branding, they mentioned us in the article, and it was an excellent article, and there are people looking to be branded all over the country, but particularly in North Carolina. Many of them came to this community during the Main Street Conference a few weeks ago. Sharon, you want to give us an update on that, if you would, on the Main Street Conference?
I thought we were done talking about this.
Never done.
I will say this, it was an extremely exciting week. A lot of hard work went into it. I am very appreciative of the mayor, the council, and the city staff for being supportive of the event. It's our 3rd time in hosting it. It is our 2nd time in setting a record, an attendance record. There was over 550 people here. We did an exceptional job, I thought, being able to put it at the Recreation Center, at Comma, at the First Methodist Church, and at the Calvary Lutheran Church. And I will tell you that I have never been more proud. We had over 50 volunteers step up and volunteer for the 2.5 days. Some of them took a day or 2 off of work because they wanted to be there the entire time. I am also very proud of Calvary Lutheran Church and the gentleman there who, he wouldn't even let us set up the tables and chairs, which really helped our rec department, but some of their folks came in and actually set up for them. We had people who staffed each site. So, and enough cannot be said about the local team. I will tell you that it even surprised me about how many times I got stopped and the folks across the state going, wow, we are blown away. One, we didn't think Morganton was this big, and meaning that the downtown, because you have to understand, if you don't travel across the state, you don't understand that most towns are 2 or 3 blocks. and we take care of 36 blocks. And our 36 blocks is incredible. We don't have just one street that looks good. We have 36 blocks that we work hard at keeping looking nice. So it was a proud week for Morganton. I was surprised. We had gotten somewhat of a heads up that the governor might attend, but he did show up. And not only did he show up and speak with two of the secretaries of state, but more importantly, he walked the streets, he shook hands, he made a lot of people's day, regardless of what side of the aisle you are on. He just is a very personal individual, and he walked into a lot of stores and made them feel good and had a lot of good comments about Morganton. So that, and the fact that your peers from across the state, my peers from across the state, and then citizens in general who want to be like Morganton, it was an incredible week. So thank you very much.
I hope in the future you will bring a picture of the buffet line and let the council see of what the community house can do and is doing.
And you know, I'm ashamed to say, see, I didn't even say a word about my staff. Both the Main Street staff and the community house staff shone, and they did a phenomenal job. The community house had to partner one time with Phil Scarborough, who did just a great job and cooked on site with us. But yes, you're right. We fed them 3 or 4 times, so we ended up doing about 600 meals in 2.5 days, and I know my girls were tired. So it was a good time, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Legislative update.
Mayor, Council, several weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to Raleigh with Mayor Pro Tem Cantrell and also the City Attorney to go back and meet with our legislative delegation during Town Hall Day. During that time, we had the opportunity to meet with Representative Blackwell, Hager, Dobson, and also Senator Daniel, and also our lobbyist. So far this session, as of today, over 1,300 bills have been filed in the General Assembly, and many of those will have an impact on the City of Morganton. 3 of them that we're really focused on right now have to do with action last session when they went back and repealed privilege license taxes for us, which is $215,000 that will impact our budget beginning July 1. At the time they repealed those taxes, they said it would go back and find a way to hold cities harmless, or at least soften that blow. But so far, nothing's been introduced to go back and do that. On top of that, this past 2 weeks ago, a sales tax redistribution bill was introduced, which will go back and could impact us. The first bill that came out would impact us around $258,000 up to $334,000. We think that will change as time goes on and the legislative process goes forward, but right now that's a major concern to us. The last item I would say is historic tax credits. Last week or the week before, we had Secretary Klutz come to town to talk about the importance of those tax credits to our community. Right now they're repealed December 30th. One of the last projects that got in the door was Alpine Mills, Clark Orange project. So we're concerned about that. I guess the only good news I have tonight is that this week is spring break at the General Assembly. So there's nothing taking place right now. So we at least feel comfortable this week. But we'll continue to track those with our lobbyists, and the city attorney and I look at that about every day.
Thank you, Scott. Public safety report. Major? Thank you for being with us.
Mr. Mayor, Council, City Staff, Major Mark Bradshaw, and it's my pleasure to be here tonight in place of Chief Rector. He sends his apologies. He is enjoying some well-deserved time with the family and his young daughter, so I told him I'd be more than happy to fill in for him here tonight at the meeting. Just want to point out some of the highlights in our annual report. Hope you had a chance to maybe review it. And I'm just going to be hitting some of the highlights and questions at the end if you have any. I just want to point out, first of all, one of the Chief Rector, one of his first things he wanted to do with this annual report, if you remember receiving some of these in the past, it was very bland, just several pages, black and white, with some charts and tables and graphs. So he really wanted to make the report a little more comprehensive and a little more presentable, and I think he's done that. Got some even got some pictures and colors, so he's really stepped the game up here with our annual report, and I know that was a big emphasis of his, was try to make this a little more presentable. I also want to point out that as we go through here, and not just this presentation but others, some of the charts and tables and graphs they don't translate real well to our to some of our TVs in here. So I want to point out to our audience members and the media, as well as those that may be viewing on Compass, and just the public in general, that this complete report is available. It's on the city's website. Just go to City of Morganton's website, Departments, Public Safety, and scroll down and you'll see the annual report. So we encourage everyone who has an interest to look at the report, and by all means, if you have any questions, feel free to bring them to us. We'd love to discuss it with you. We're going to start, if you have your copy and you want to follow along, I'm just going to skip around a little bit. We're going to start on page 13. This is what we call our Part 1 crimes or index crimes. This is what we are required to report to the FBI, and then they compile these across the nation, and they come up with a national uniform crime report every year. And there's it's broken into two sections. It's violent crimes and then property crimes. And you can see our numbers there, and our violent crimes remain low. That's what we like to see. We live in a very safe community, and it's our intent to keep it that way. I do want to point out that sometimes when you're dealing with statistics and you got very low sample sizes, sometimes the numbers can be somewhat distorted. For example, we didn't have any murders in 2013, which is great, but unfortunately we did have an incident on West Concourse Street, that tragedy, if y'all remember, it cost 3 people their lives. So thus it shows a 300% increase in our murder rate. So if you look at 300% increase without looking at the raw numbers, it can seem somewhat distorted. So I want to point that out to you. Also under property crimes, if you look under arson, for example, we had just 1 arson reported in 2013. We had 11 reported in 2014, so it seems like we have this wave of arsons going around. That's actually not the truth. If you remember, 9 of those arsons were from one incident where I think they tried to destroy Sharon's downtown. Individual was arrested and charged with those various counts of arson, and that case is still pending. That is our Part 1 crimes. I also want to point out to you the various calls for service. Public safety during 2014 responded to over 31,000 calls for service of various kinds, and you can see the top 10, kind of like a David Letterman list, right? The top 10 calls for public safety. And every time we go on a call, it's classified by a nature code, and that's what these top 10 represent, from vehicle stops being number 1. You see 911 hang-ups. They have increased tremendously, as you can see from the previous years. A couple of reasons for that. First of all, technology. Our new 911 center has the technology now to be much more accurate when we have a cellular device. Someone calling 911, they can track that and give us a location pretty close. It's getting much more accurate. And also they have changed our protocols to where we were responding to those 911 calls, where in the past perhaps we didn't respond to every single one. And that's a good thing. We want to see if someone needs assistance. 31,000, that is actually a 20% increase from just 4 years ago. So we're seeing a lot more, and we're doing that, handling that with the same staff that we have. We're meeting those needs. Our fire statistics, very similarly, you can see that during 2014, we had 483 calls for service for fire. That's anywhere from false alarms to a working structure fire to good intent calls, such as replacing batteries and smoke alarms, checking carbon monoxide detectors, a variety of calls. And that's up tremendously over 2013, where we had just under 400. And if the first quarter of this year is any indication, I think we're going to see even more numbers. So again, our call volume is up, but we're able to meet that demand with the existing and the same personnel that we've had previously. Our traffic analysis, you can see our 5-year summary. Our traffic accidents remain very consistent over this 5-year period. This year they are slightly down, just slightly over 1,000 traffic accidents. You think about just a city the size of Morganton, that's quite a volume of accidents that are occurring. You see the number injured. Unfortunately, we did have 2 fatalities during 2014, and that's always a sad part of the job. Our DWI arrests, they also remain fairly consistent across the last 5 years. And our traffic citation, you can see they are actually increased over 4,600 this past year. And that is in part because now we have a dedicated traffic unit, and they can concentrate and focus on those calls of speeding in our neighborhoods and impaired drivers and et cetera. So we anticipated that increase in those. And although it's not included in the slides, on page 20 you'll see a whole list of traffic analysis And that is simply from those two officers. For example, they accounted for 75 of the 249 DWIs that were arrested in the city of Morganton. So they're doing outstanding work, very productive, and again, they are dedicated for nothing but traffic safety. So they're doing a great job with that. Training, of course, one of the challenges of public safety is meeting the training demands of both the law enforcement services we have to provide and the fire services. Over the years, those training requirements and mandates for specified number of hours have increased, and again, it's something that we have been able to meet, and we will continue to do so. In law enforcement, a little over 7,000 hours, and that equates to 117 hours on average for each sworn officer per year, or last year, I should say, 2014. Now, on the fire side, over 14,000 hours of documented fire training, and that amounts to an average of 157 hours of training for the year. Now, of course, a public safety officer has to maintain those training hours in both disciplines. So if you do the math on that, it equates to 274 hours on average last year for each PSO in the department. And to refine that even further, that amounts to just shy of 7 full weeks of training based on a 40-hour work week that these officers, these public safety officers, are having to go through. But again, we are able to meet that challenge. We will continue to do so. In the front of the book, I think starts on page 10, we have a variety of highlights and accomplishments. I want to recognize Captain Jason Wiston. Not only was he promoted in 2014, but we sent him to the Administrative Officers Management Program, AOMP, and that's held each year at North Carolina State University, a 12-week management program. And Jason excelled in that. He was actually his class president, so we were definitely want to recognize him for that. This time last year, we were able to place into service our newest fire apparatus, Quint 1, and that has already paid dividends on numerous fires. Just has a capability that none of our other apparatus had, so that is definitely an asset, and thank you for supporting that project. We also try to recognize our employees. Sergeant Mike Ferraro, he received the Distinguished Service Citation for Valor, and that was for an incident on the Greenway where we had an individual that was rescued from the Catawba River. They went down on some inner tubes, become trapped, and Sergeant Ferraro actually had to go out into the river and make that rescue, so we wanted to recognize him for that. PSO Chris Clark, meritorious service citation out of that same incident. We had several other officers that were able to achieve life-saving citations, and these are very rewarding for the officers. We carry automatic external defibrillators, so they've been very successful in actually making some saves. That includes Sergeant Gary Massey, PSO Marty Coward, PSO Michael Gates, and one of our fire engineers, Pete Aldridge. So we definitely want to recognize them for that. Also recognize PSO Jeff Gilstrap. He received a statewide award from the North Carolina Forensic Test for Alcohol branch as the Drug Recognition Expert of the Year. Very well-deserved award. He's actually one of those two officers I spoke of earlier that is on our traffic squad. And then our support services supervisor, Jason Smith, received the Governor's Award for volunteer service, and there are many more of these listed in the report. The last couple of pages in your manual, or I'm sorry, in the report, also has some other highlights. We continue to be aggressively seeking grants. We know that the taxpayer dollars are we need to be good stewards of that money, and anything we can do to help with that, we try. We've been successful in achieving a number of grants. One of those is that traffic unit I spoke of. They are currently funded by the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program. So we received year two funding during 2014. We also received a couple grants from the Governor's Crime Commission, and one was for an electric vehicle for use on the Greenway during festivals, and you may have seen that out last fall, and it's that time of year again, so you'll be seeing that vehicle out and about on the Greenway doing that patrol. We also was in need of a telephone radio recorder. Since the 911 center vacated our building, we had to replace and update some equipment. We were able to do that in part through some grant funds through the Governor's Crime Commission. So we will continue to seek out those grants. Various community outreach programs, we certainly want to involve our community and reach out to our community. We do fire prevention. This past year, 2014, reached over 1,500 citizens, and many of those, of course, school-aged children. 26 various events throughout the year. whether it be at schools, at the rec center, various events that we are invited to. The Blue Elves, that program's 25-plus years strong, and that's where we partner with the Morganton Housing Authority, and we provide gifts and toys for children 0 to 15, or newborn to 15 years of age for Christmas. And we focus on those individuals residing in Morganton Housing Authority. And last year, 2014, we reached 290 children with that program. In June of 2014, we implemented a new program. It's Coffee with a Cop. And it's kind of as the name suggests, we just have a sit down, very informal. And we have this at various locations throughout the city. We've had it at the Grind, the Pat's Snack Bar, various other places, and we will continue to have that program. It's just an opportunity for citizens to come up and in just a very informal setting, sit down with myself and Chief, the other major officers that are present, and just ask us any questions or voice any concerns that they may have. Been very well received, and we will continue to do that. We also continue with the DARE program in our elementary schools, and last year we taught the DARE program to 189 fifth grade students. In conjunction with that, we also had probably, I guess this was our 20th annual Operation Safe Haven, and this is a week-long summer camp that is free of charge to those graduating fifth graders that graduated DARE, and we're able to keep it free through a lot of assistance from our community and support of the council, and we want to thank you for that. So that's always a joy, and planning is ongoing right now for this year's Operation Safe Haven. So that's just some of the highlights. If you have any questions now or later, feel free to take a minute if you have anything.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank y'all.
Sir. Okay. Municipal Power Agency, anything?
That'll be in May.
May, okay. Consent agenda, Scott.
Mayor, Council, you have tonight 3 consent items that are considered to be routine and will be enacted with one motion unless a council member requests more information on those. The 3 items, the first one is approval of minutes from the March 2nd, 2015 meeting, also the special workshop on March 2nd, 2015, and our annual workshop on February 20th. Also, the second item is consideration of tax releases in the amount of $1,327.57. And the last item is consideration of adoption of amendments to the municipal records retention schedule, and that's directed by the State Department of Cultural Resources, and we normally just tag along with what they do.
Move to accept the consent agenda.
Second. Motion second. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public hearing. I'll open up the second public hearing for the City of Morganton Consolidated Action Plan for the fiscal year 2015-2019. And Lisa, you're on.
Good evening. This is the second required public hearing for our 5-year consolidated plan for our CDBG entitlement program. We have been obtaining lots of information from various organizations and agencies to be able to complete our consolidated plan. We have come up with a few goals and objectives, and I thought I would go over those real quickly and then tell you our first year action plan. Some of the strategies and things that are important to the next 5 years: the Broughton Hospital Reuse Project, the Old Walmart Shopping Center Reuse, South Sterling Street Hospitality Corridor Improvements, elimination of slum and blight in areas that we have some vacant houses or commercial buildings, increase economic and job opportunities, implementing of the Mission 2030 program through the economic land use development, stimulating the home ownership opportunities through the Unifor Consortium First Time Homebuyers Program, continue supporting our nonprofits in the area to provide service to low-moderate income people, and also we will continue to address our homeless through our nonprofits, eliminate lead-based paint if we do any housing programs, and also we're going to do some public infrastructure, which will be water, sewer, streets where they might be needed. For fiscal year 2015, which will start June 1st of 2015, we will be getting $147,970 this year, and we have broke that down to 5 different categories. The first is install sidewalks in low and moderate income areas.
We will continue our nonprofit program, our small business zone program, our clearance through spot and slum blighted areas, and then our administration.
Okay. Any public comments from anyone on the 2015-2019 consolidated plan for the city of Morganton? Close the public hearing. Council?
I move to direct staff to proceed with the submission of the Consolidated Action Plan for fiscal year 2015 through 2019.
Second.
Have a motion second. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing. Consider a zoning ordinance amendment to section 342D3 to clarify the conditions of which family care homes may be established.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that is in the absence of Lee Anderson, Development Director, who's on vacation this week, I'll make a presentation on that. As you know, our recently adopted new zoning ordinance is a very extensive thing, and as I believe Lee predicted, there were probably some things that will come up over time. We realized there were minor unintended misdirections, mistakes, or just unintended consequences. This is one of them. Family care homes, and I think in your material the definition is attached. Family care homes are small, less than 6 residents, which must be licensed by the state. They cannot have any violent or dangerous residents and can only provide incidental or occasional medical care and so forth. The new zoning ordinance as adopted had a clause that said no family care home could be located within half a mile of another family care home. Well, the problem was that was meant to only be in certain residential neighborhoods, and family care homes, in fact, are allowed in, and there are family care homes now existing in what are now classed as medium intensity zoning districts and central business district, as well as in the low intensity district. What was intended all along was actually to make that half-mile restriction apply only in low intensity and in the neighborhood conservation overlays. This matter was realized by staff. It was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission at their last meeting, and after consideration and a hearing, they voted 8-0 to approve this amendment, which would simply clarify that the 1/2 mile restriction applies only in the low intensity zone and neighborhood conservation overlay districts.
Thank you, Louis. Anybody want to make a comment? Close the public hearing. I need 2 motions, guys.
I move we confirm the requested amendment, which is in compliance with the Morganton Mission 2030 goals and objectives.
Second. Have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Another motion.
I move to adopt a zoning ordinance amendment that requires 1/2 mile spacing conditions for family care homes only within LID and NCO districts.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I'm going to move number 4, gentlemen, up to number 1 on other business. Consideration of entering into a CDBG. That's why we had to do the public hearing. Small business loan agreement with Avery Avenue Partners for the purpose of opening a new grocery store at 208 Avery Avenue. Scott.
Council, you're aware that several years ago, the City Council established a CDBG Small Business Loan Program to go back and encourage small business, but also to achieve our goals of the 2030 plan. Tonight, we have a request for $75,000 loan. Avery Avenue Partners is a local partnership that owns the property at 208 Avery Avenue, the former Harris Teeter. The property's been vacant for the last 18 months. In an effort to go back and renovate that building and occupy that building with a grocery store, they've entered into agreement with Food Matters Market. Food Matters Market is an independent grocer. They have a location in Brevard, North Carolina. I guess in the next week, you'll probably have one in Hickory, North Carolina, I believe. In the next 5 years, they plan to add several more throughout the southeast. The grocery will occupy approximately 15,000 square feet of the Harris Teeter building next door. With our $75,000 investment through the loan, that will be supplemented with $400,000 from Avery Avenue Partners and $500,000 from Food Matters Market to go back to achieve that project. They will create a minimum of 10 new jobs, and 6 of those jobs will go back and be for low to moderate income individuals with that. Tonight we have, I know folks from Avery Avenue Partners here, and also with Food Matters. And Mayor, I don't know if you want to ask them to say
Anybody,
anything.
any of y'all three want to say anything? Y'all are welcome. You got the podium. We'll be here all night if you want to.
I think they should.
Yeah. Al Kirshner. Al is the principal partner for the Food Matters organization, and we appreciate you being here. We tried to move you as far up as we could because you've got to get back to Asheville. I understand that. But if you'd like to say something, you're welcome to come to the podium, state your name, where you reside, and you're welcome to say anything.
Main reason that we want to get up the thing is because I'm originally from Wisconsin, and so we have business to take care of tonight, so that's why.
Do you have a television in your car?
I do not. I wish I did. But no, I'm working with Jerry and we're here to see if we can come up with an arrangement to have a Food Matters Market. We're a small, locally, we work with small communities. I'm originally with Earth Fair, and my partner is a former CEO of Earth Fair, and we opened up what we call a local market. We did in Brevard about 2.5 years ago, found it to be very successful. Our whole goal is to bring good food, good participation in community to the smaller communities where Earth Fair and Whole Foods and those type of markets will not come. So that's why we're here, and any help that you can provide for us in this process will be welcome.
Al, I must tell you, you're providing a niche that this community desperately needs. As you know, the young lady uptown that did a petition that somewhat got out of hand. You know.
Yeah, she had us here before we ever got out the door.
I'm thinking you got about 1,500, 2,000, 2,800 names on that petition, but we are looking forward to it.
Well, we're looking forward to it. If I can get Jerry to sign paperwork, will be good.
Jerry.
I got to
Please, Jerry.
I got to pick on him a little bit. I appreciate your having us here, and looking forward to moving on with our project.
Thank you a lot, Al. Any questions of Al, by the way? Thank you, Al.
These cards up here.
Okay.
For anybody.
All right.
You want to.
Lay 'em right.
Sure. This is kind of a brochure of what we look like over in Brevard.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Edward, you don't want to say anything since Jerry's not going to say anything?
Mayor, make a motion to enter into a $75,000 CDBG loan agreement with Avery Avenue Partners for the purposes of renovating an existing building and operating a new Food Matters Market at 208 Avery Avenue.
Second. We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
My neighbor, I got a second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, you're on your way, Jerry. Now, I want to see you go up to your attorney's office and take care of that tomorrow. I don't believe that. Okay, did I close that? I closed your public hearing, that last one on the homes, didn't I? I did.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, consideration of an engineering contract with Friesen Nichols and appropriation of funds for emergency aeration modifications for the pure oxygen system and budget amendment.
The next two items are both pertaining to the wastewater treatment plant and some performance issues we're having there. The first item is going to deal with the short-term solution. Second item will deal with a longer-term solution, but I think it's critical you hear the nuts and bolts of that project from the experts. And so, Brad Boris, will you lead the group?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. After 40-plus years of service, one of our key processes at the wastewater treatment plant has become inoperable, and that's our pure oxygen system. Even though it's challenged the staff in the recent months, they've done a great job to keep the plant compliant. However, it has impacted our treatment process. Although we have some problems with the treatment process, we're still doing a good job. We have a short-term plan in place to address the immediate needs that we have at the plant. We also have a beginning brick to lay on the path to future success at the water plant or the wastewater plant as well. We've partnered with Freeze and Nichols, our engineering firm, and they have really done a good job of putting some projects and plans in place. We've partnered with our staff as well at the wastewater plant. And I would like at this time to introduce Charles Archer with Freeze and Nichols, and he's going to introduce the rest of the team members with Freeze and Nichols and give you a little bit of an overview of the projects that we're talking about down at the plant.
Welcome, Charles.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. It's an honor to be here with you this evening. It's also a pleasure to be working with your staff and on your behalf at the wastewater treatment plant for the last year or so. As Brad outlined, we have a number of challenges that we've been working on together, and your staff has done a remarkable job of keeping this plant running and in compliance with the state's requirements. With me tonight, I have three other folks with Freeze and Nichols. Brian Jan, who's our manager of our water wastewater group here in North Carolina. Robert Vinay, who's senior project manager. The name may sound somewhat familiar to you. And last but not least,
Charles, that's not going to help him here.
Yeah. I don't have a vote.
Every little thing, we'll try. Leonard Ripley, who is I call him our process guru. He's going to go over the issues with the plant and what the proposed recommendations are. And if Leonard seems a little bit anxious, he too is a Wisconsin fan, and get him to show you his socks when he gets up here. So, Leonard?
Well, we'll do the socks first.
Oh, my goodness.
Super. It was either the socks or flip-flops, and I thought that was totally inappropriate. So let me... Getting there. Okay. Well, Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to come and visit with you about this and discuss one of my favorite topics, which is wastewater and wastewater treatment, which may seem like a strange thing to talk about, but really these days it's not so much a matter of wastewater treatment and disposal, it's really a matter of water reclamation. We're realizing this is a valuable resource, and it's not something to be just disposed of, but it's something to be reused and cared for as water is becoming more and more critical resource. So I want to talk a little bit about treatment in general and apply that to your treatment plant. Talk about some of the issues there and some of the ideas and approaches that we have moving forward. First of all, a little bit of history lesson. The original plant was built in 1972. Now that may seem like a long time ago. As I get a little more gray and a little more girth, 1972 doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but for a wastewater treatment plant, it is. Generally, there's no hard and fast rule for treatment plants, but generally mechanical equipment needs some major maintenance, if not partial replacement after about 10 years. Usually the lifetime of major mechanical equipment is 20, 25 years, something like that. It's not unusual for concrete structures to go well past 50 years. However, by the time those 50 years pass, usually their original purpose is now obsolete or the equipment has changed. So it's not unusual for us to take all of that equipment out and maybe repurpose that concrete for something else. So your plant is at that point and then some. It received a major upgrade and expansion in 1995, but that's not exactly yesterday either. And then a compliance improvements project which looked at just some very specific items, some deficiencies in the plant to bring that up so it could stay in compliance just a couple years ago. Let me get rid of that little sign. The capacity of the plant, the good news is that the rating from DENR, the regulatory agency, is that it's rated for a max month flow of 10.5 MGD, and MGD is the abbreviation for million gallons per day. That's a lot of water. But your current average flow is about 4.5 MGD. So often when I talk to city councils, I'm in the position of saying your capacity is 10.5 and right now you're at 9.8. So the good news is you're not in that situation, but we'll move on. For those, how many of you have been to the plant? Any of you? Show of hands? Very good. Okay. Many city councils I talk to, they don't know where the plant even is. So I won't belabor this since you know where it is. I will talk a little bit. This is the wastewater 101 portion. The first part of the plant is, appropriately enough, primary treatment. And what this is basically just running the wastewater through settling tanks, and that portions of the particles and things that will settle out of the wastewater by gravity do that to the bottom of the tank, and they're withdrawn as what's called primary sludge. Gravity is the cheapest thing that we can use in a tank, so whenever we use that, that's the first thing. But that doesn't get everything out. The next thing, appropriately again, is secondary treatment. Here we take the remaining particles in organics and we use bacteria to break them down. So they may be pollutants to us, but to the bacteria, they're food. So they oxidize the pollutants, convert them to carbon dioxide, to nitrate, to a little bit more water, and mostly to more bacteria. So as we get rid of one problem, the organics coming in, we basically transfer it to another problem, and that's more bacteria. Those bacteria we run through another set of settling tanks and pull those out as secondary sludge, and those have to be disposed of. The last portion in the liquids treatment is disinfection. Your plant uses chlorine, which is a very typical process. This does not kill all of the organisms in the water, but it kills enough of them that it doesn't create a health risk when it's discharged to the river. There are a number of ways to do disinfection, but chlorine's sort of the classic one. Now, I mentioned that we produce a primary sludge and a secondary sludge, and the job's not done until those sludges are handled. If you look at the capital cost of most treatment plants, about half of the capital cost goes to handle liquids, and the other half goes actually to handle the solids residuals from those liquids processes. What your plant does is it has holding tanks for the primary sludge and then blends it with the secondary sludge, and then it goes through centrifuges that spin it at very high speed and produce a cake. Then that cake is composted and sold as product. So very beneficial reuse. If you look at the aerial photo of the plant here, the influent comes in at the lower left. The influent PS is pump station, and then that lifts it up to the top of the hill. And the the lower right, the grit removal removes things like sand or even chicken bones that go down your disposal that create problems later in the plant. From there, it goes to the two primary clarifiers over on the right side, and then it moves to the left and goes through the reactors 1, 2, and 3, or where the oxidation occurs with the bacteria. And then it goes to the secondary clarifiers 1, 2, 3, and 4, where the bacteria settle out, and then most of those bacteria are sent back to the process to keep it going. Then the excess are wasted. Then the upper portion here shows the chlorine contact before discharge, and then the solids handling is off the slide just a little bit. I want you to notice in the upper right corner the EQ basin, that's an abbreviation for equalization. Your plant, like most plants, is designed for average flow and some peaking factor, but during storms, extra water comes into the treatment collection system. And with the ideal collection system, none of this water would get in there, but there is no ideal collection system. So we have to be able to design a plant to take those big flow peaks. One of the ways to do that, instead of trying to have the capacity for all of that flow to go through the plant at one time, is we basically just sort of park it over here in the equalization basin. When the flow drops back down, we just bring that back into the treatment process. Keep that in your mind, because we'll be talking a little bit more about that in a moment. Ongoing improvements right now. In 2015, we're replacing internal equipment. As I mentioned, you can, if the concrete's still good, you can just replace the guts of it in one of the primary clarifiers and the sludge pumps associated with that. And we'll be doing that also next year with primary clarifier number 2. Now, let's get to the exciting part of this, I guess. Most treatment plants now, in fact, I did a little mental thing before I came in, use air to give oxygen to the bacteria. And there are a bunch of different ways to do this, but generally the air is pushed into the tanks with almost like you would have in your aquarium, a stone or a membrane that makes tiny, tiny bubbles, and that transfers the oxygen. At the time this plant was designed and built, those diffusers and that technology did not even exist. So it used what's called a pure oxygen, and that's really a misnomer. It's not pure oxygen, it's just concentrated. It's air that has a very high concentration of oxygen. There are a couple ways to design this, but the idea was you can get more bacteria in the tank if you give it we'll call it pure oxygen. But to get pure oxygen, you have to have some method to concentrate this, either distill it out of the atmosphere, or if you've ever been in a nursing home and noticed the little units that supply oxygen cannulas for people, those are pressure swing absorption. And what it does is it pressurizes the air, and there's a special media then releases differentially low oxygen or high oxygen air. And this is what happens in your plant. Well, it did until recently, just on a very large scale. So there are a few pure oxygen systems still in operation. The ones that are in operation are just because they haven't switched them over to oxygen, or since they have a small footprint, they haven't done that yet. Your pressure swing absorption, the process that makes this happen, it's badly deteriorated. In fact, I think the first time I visited the plant was about a year ago, and in going through it, everyone was aware that it's on its last legs, and unfortunately, that prediction turned out to be true. So the plant right now, I really commend the staff kudos in keeping it going. They're using liquid oxygen that they're importing. It comes in by truckload. If you look at the pictures here, you can see some of the piping below with the ice from the liquid oxygen. So that has to be trucked in roughly every 72 hours, sometimes a little bit more. The problem with LOX, well, really two problems. It's very expensive to generate it off-site and then truck it in. And also, you can't tell the bacteria, if you don't have oxygen, just coast for a while, the truck's on its way, it'll be here tomorrow. They have to, just like we have to have oxygen, they have to have oxygen, and that has to be supplied consistently. So what we're looking at is, first of all, an emergency repairs to what we're looking at is in the EQ basin, to convert that to an aeration basin so that we can give air to the bacteria there. But really then long-term is look at a phased conversion to switch the plant away from oxygen and use a more conventional aeration system. Now that we do have technologies where we can transfer air, atmospheric air, into the wastewater much more efficiently. So the short-term corrective action that we've come up with is to convert that EQ basin to a temporary aeration basin. Now long-term, I think it still will be an aeration basin, but it will be configured a little bit differently. It will have surface aerators. I'll show a picture of those in just a moment. And then the electrical equipment to supply those aerators, and then some of the piping to get the wastewater over to the EQ basin and then back to the clarifiers. I would estimate, and the plant is doing some measurements right now that will allow us to refine this estimate, that will give you about 4 MGD of capacity, maybe 3.5. It really depends on the strength of the wastewater. So this will not entirely eliminate the need for LOX, but it will drastically decrease it. So you'll still have to have some LOX on hand, or if the flows come up, but it will cut it almost eliminate it. We estimate that, and we've talked to manufacturers to try to line up equipment that we can get the whole thing designed, get the DENR approval, and get it online in 3 to 6 months. And the capital cost is about $620,000. Now, I want to emphasize this is a temporary solution, but it's not a walkaway. The parts will be usable and reconfigured there. So, and everything we do will be done looking at the long range, so that we don't have to come and throw a lot of that away. What this will look like is, I mentioned the EQ basin before. You can see that in the upper right. We would put in 4 surface aerators. These are not the absolute most efficient form of aeration, but they're available off the shelf. In fact, we've checked with the company that we would recommend getting them from. They can ship them this week if you want them. And then it would involve putting those in the electrical supply for them, and then bringing a pipe back to return that water, the treated wastewater. There's not one there right now. In the upper left, you can see a surface aerator. Basically, they just float on the top, and they mix the wastewater up, and they splash it. That's how it does the aeration. So you don't have to put in a lot of piping, or the installation is very simple. Any questions on that?
You say it's going to be churning this up?
Correct.
Is that going to do anything to the odor emissions in that area?
That's a good question. At that point in the plant, the wastewater is not real odorous unless you let it go septic and don't supply oxygen. As long as you keep it aerated, it has sort of we describe it as earthy, sort of a mushroomy smell. But it's not like at the beginning of the treatment plant. This is from a wastewater guy. There are two parts of the plant, of any treatment plant, that really are odorous. Where the wastewater comes in, and if you aerate that, it will really generate odors. And the other is the sludge handling, if you let that sit and go septic. But in the middle part of the plant where this would be, there's not that much of a potential for odors. So now, would I eat lunch next to it? Probably not. That kind of gives you a perspective, I think.
Well, what about the neighborhood?
This process is used in larger treatment plants, particularly industrial treatment plants, and is closer to residential areas and other plants. So I really don't see it as increasing the odor issues from the plant over what you have right now. There are other portions of the plant that I think are more significant odor generators. In fact, near the property line, the grit removal is where that wastewater first basically daylights, and that's a bigger odor potential than this would be.
What's the life expectancy of the surface aerators?
By repairing the motor and lubricating them, probably 10 to 15 years. But I think, this is short term, and the idea is you could either sell them back because there's a market to refurbish them. You could keep them in the future if you have another basin that's an equalization basin, or you can keep them for emergency use. So certainly well into beyond the point that you would need them.
So they would not stay in the EQ basin forever, correct?
No. And that gets into the second portion, which, sort of looking in the crystal ball, I think that EQ basin will be a more conventional aeration basin that will have pipes in the bottom with diffusers. And at that point, you take those out. And then you can either use them for another basin that would be an EQ basin. In fact, one of the ideas is to reconfigure the reactors 1, 2, and 3. Partially cut the roofs off of those and use those, and you could put the aerator in there. You can even change the motor and the gearing, make them smaller, or you can just sell it.
Would the underground pipe go in as we build the EQ basin?
Well, the EQ basin is built right now.
Okay.
So there is a line. If you look at the picture, there's an arrow that comes from the FC 102, which is right and in the middle. That line is there already to divert stormwater.
Okay.
So it's in place, and we would reuse that line. We wouldn't change that. But there's not a line coming back to the clarifiers. Now, ideally, this would be buried and trenched, but for purposes of this emergency, we would keep above ground. We would, have casing so that you can drive over it with equipment in there. But it would be a 24-inch line, and it would not be trenched. So the idea here is to get it done very quickly.
Would it ever be trenched?
The long term, it would not be used, but you could reclaim it and just use the pipe. So there's, the cost to trench it and then come back and dig it up, and the extra time to do that. I think at this point, the critical thing is to get it in and get it working. Because as Brad said, the plant is remaining in compliance right now. But a plant, it's like a boxer. You only take so many blows, and then that one last blow will put you down. And your plant right now has very little reserve. So I think it's important to move as quickly as possible to get this in. I don't want to scare you, but it is very serious.
Well, thinking 6 months out, possibly if we had a hurricane come through with lots of rainfall, we would need that overflow, correct?
Well, the peak flow management, and we have some ideas on reconfiguring the other reactors for peak flow. Some of it is just an act of God. If you have a hurricane, there's only so much you can do.
Right.
And, I can't remember the legal term for that, but
God.
Yeah. God. There's one of those Latin terms too. I've forgotten all my Latin. So, and then long-term would be to convert the entire process from the pure oxygen over to air and use that, probably that equalization basin, build more of those. And then there are some issues with the clarifiers to retrofit those. So, in fact, the intent is to have a kickoff meeting tomorrow and start really identifying some of those alternatives, assuming you approve the contract, and then develop those for a long-term plan. The other thing is I mentioned that you use chlorine gas for your disinfection. That comes in cylinders that's compressed. Most plants are getting away from that, not in getting away from chlorine, but they're bringing it in as hypochlorite, or basically bleach. It's like household bleach, but a much more concentrated form. And that comes in by liquid tanker and stored, so we would include that. We anticipate that the long-term study to do that would be 24 to 36 months. Well, actually, to do the conversion there, and cost $7 to $8 million. And these give some of the timelines to do that. The first one, I think, is right now, obviously, the most critical, and that's an emergency, which would be April to September of 2015. And then you can see the long term down there would be last to probably June 2018, something like that. And if you have more detailed questions on the schedule or some of the more details, then I turn those over to Brian. Any questions? Hopefully I haven't scared you too much. But.
Gentlemen, we have two motions.
Well, first I want to go back and let you know that the $620,000 cost is inclusive of the design, equipment, procurement, and construction, so it's all inclusive. Of that amount, we have $150,000 that we can transfer from capital now, so we just didn't need to take $470,000 out of retained earnings to cover that. So that's part of the second motion. The first motion would be to go back and to contract with Freeze Nichols for $64,920 to go back and begin the work.
Mayor, make a motion to approve and authorize Freeze and Nichols to perform engineering services for the emergency aeration modification project in the amount of $64,920.
Second.
Motion second, discussion.
I don't think we have any choice, do we?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next.
Move to approve a budget amendment for the appropriation of funds for the short-term corrective action required to address the emergency aeration modification project in the amount of $470,000.
Second.
Motion second, discussion of that. All in favor, say aye.
One comment, I think we discussed this in the Finance Committee meeting when this was brought to our attention. Spending, $7 or $8 more million on the sewer plant, it's somewhere down the line there's going to be a change in the rate that we charge for sewer. But the estimate is that that's 3 to 4 years away. Is that correct?
It's several years down the road, and I think in the upcoming capital plan, we have a rate study suggested 2 years out, and that will go back and help determine the rate, just like we do periodically today.
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Consideration of a contract with Freeze and Nichols for the wastewater process conversion study.
This is the long-term solution to get the plan prepared. The cost of this is $49,905. That money is in the current operational budget. It is our goal, by having this study, we can go to the state this fall and hopefully get 0% a loan, but at worst case, a low-interest loan. But I think this study is very important to go back and make that happen.
Okay.
I move we approve and authorize a task authorization from Freeze and Nichols to complete wastewater process conversion study in the amount of $49,905.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, next item is consideration of award of a bid for the installation of improvements at the Lael Road Sewer Lift Station. Scott.
This is your last wastewater item tonight, I hope. This is to go back and for the, I guess he said, as he mentioned, the Lael Road Sewer Lift Station for improvements to that. This mainly serves the Glen Alpine area. The cost of this, we bid it out. The low bidder was Brushy Mountain Builders of Lenore for $89,000. And it was in the current budget, so it's within the budget.
I move we authorize and contract with Brushy Mountain Builders, Inc. of Lenore, North Carolina, in the amount of $89,000 for the installation of improvements at the Lael Road Sewer Lift Station.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consideration of a budget amendment for the purpose of funding a study for the Broughton reuse project, Scott.
As you all aware that the state of North Carolina approved $200,000 with a $200,000 match for the Broughton reuse study. We have come up with a $200,000 match with $100,000 from the Golden Leaf Foundation, $50,000 from the Appalachian Regional Commission, $10,000 from Duke Energy, $2,500 from AT&T, and $5,000 from Burke Development, Inc. And the balance of that will be split between Burke County and the city of Morganton, and our share will be $16,500. We have money to cover that cost by 2 rebates we're receiving, one from the state procurement card and the other from our self-insured prescription drug program.
Make a motion to approve a budget amendment to appropriate funds for the Broughton reuse project.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consideration of a budget amendment to receive and appropriate Main Street Solutions grant funds received from the state. Scott.
Last fall, we received North Carolina Main Street Solutions grants, and you approved last November those to go to Treat for $25,000, Fontaflora $25,000, $50,000 to Hamilton Williams, and $75,000 to the Community House Community Kitchen. The money is coming in, and now we have to go back and allocate that money within the budget, and you have an amendment there for $175 that will cover those grants.
Motion to appropriate Main Street Solutions grants funds necessary to receive from the state.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Consideration of a budget amendment to appropriate receipt of reimbursements of funds for marketing. Scott.
This is to go back and appropriate the funds that we received from Electric Cities, $533 for marketing magnets.
I move we appropriate receipt of reimbursement of funds from Electric Cities to the city for marketing magnets.
Second.
Motion second, discussion.
Isn't it wonderful to spend
Joshua
this,
Harris will give you a magnet on the way out the door.
to spend this grant money?
Yeah, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Consideration and authorization to apply for a grant from the North Carolina Appalachian Regional Commission, ARC, through the Western Piedmont Council of Governments. Scott.
We were informed a few weeks ago from the Western Piedmont Council of Governments of a grant opportunity from the Appalachian Regional Commission. They have $100,000 that will go to Alexander, Burke, and Caldwell counties. We hope to go back and apply for a grant for wayfinding signage up to $35,000. Our last phase is estimated at $75,000, and this will go a long way to completing that project.
I move to approve authorizing staff to apply for a $35,000 grant from the North Carolina Appalachian Regional Commission through the Western Piedmont Council of Government.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to move our public comment session to 6 p.m. at the start of our regular council meetings. I'd like to make that in form of a motion.
For the purpose of discussion, I'm going to second that motion.
May I ask just an inquiry are you, in effect, you're saying you would begin our meeting, move the beginning time for our meetings from 5:30 to 6?
That is correct. Speaking in favor of the motion, I guess, I made the motion. I really think it's like tonight, we had no one to come speak publicly, and I think that people need to see what's being discussed at all parts of the city council meeting. That's the purpose of my motion.
Well, I made the motion several months ago that we not televise the comments, and there's several reasons. The comment period has been sort of monopolized by a few people that have been very critical of the way that the city operates. And they have no solutions other than to just, in my opinion, antagonize this council and members in particular. And one of the outspoken folks that have been very critical does not live in the city of Morganton. And in the last election cycle, we had, well, the guy that ran against me, he used that public comment period for campaign purposes. And that was uncalled for, and it wasn't right. And to display on our local TV channel that the kind of actions that we have seen, I think if we're accused of withholding or not letting the public know what this criticism is there anyone that is going to benefit from this, the display of the criticism? We sit here and we listen to it, and if action is necessary, it's turned over to the staff to take the necessary action. So I can see no reason for us to televise the criticism that comes to us, because nothing is being gained for it. And to display the negative attitudes that we have seen for the last few months is unnecessary for this council to put up with.
Right.
It does not make the job, our job, or the staff's job any easier.
We've dealt with this issue and motion, similar motion. This is probably the second or third time that we've dealt with it. You weren't here when it was the job of half a dozen people to take me down personally. And I asked one of our city council members before, put you in my place, what your daughters and your wife would think sitting at home watching that on TV. I've gone and spoke to several hundred people in the last, more than that, in the last 2 years. When I explain what went on, never was a problem. So if you have a problem with somebody, I'll be happy to talk to them. I really will. Because I know there's a question. Some people don't get that answer from me or anybody on the council, and you've been on here a year and a half, and you just didn't see it like we saw it. It was unmerciful. It was not needed. It was personal attacks that were ridiculous. One person came so close to being kicked out of here.
I think what we have to consider on this is the fact that the public comment portion of a city council meeting is for an individual to come on a one-on top 5 basis and express to the council a concern that they have about the operation of the city, or if they have an individual item that they want to bring to the attention of the council, then they can bring that item to the council and we can consider it. Now, for folks that would want to have public air, then I feel what they need to do is to contact the radio station, newspaper, or public television and buy their airtime and express their concerns. I don't think it's something that the city council needs to hear. We're operating the business here, folks. We shouldn't be subjected to personal criticism and personal attacks, and that's how I see it.
I was on this council when we voted to do away with the televising the public comment. I don't like the personal attacks either, but it has come to my attention from several citizens that we give the impression we're trying to hide something. And I'm going to ask our attorney if there's any way that we can distinguish between a personal attack and escort somebody out of here when that starts, because I don't like it. I'll just be right up front with it. I don't think that anybody deserves to go through that. But I don't want anybody to think we're trying to hide anything.
As a member of this council for several years, I have never seen any group, any one individual that has been on this council that has ever tried to hide anything. The minutes of what we do are recorded. They can be reviewed by any citizen. They are on our website. And people that feel like that this untelevised portion of our meetings is hiding something, why don't they one time come visit one of these meetings? It's easy for somebody to judge when they don't have all the facts. And people that think that we're trying to hide something need to step up and give examples of this hiding or these, quote, secret meetings that we have. For some reason, I've never been invited to a secret meeting, so it was really a secret. So, enough said.
Councilman Simmons, answering your question as best I can make an opinion about it, there have been some cities or counties in their policies on public comment who have tried to restrict what the speakers can say. And I think for the reasons that y'all talked to try to limit personal attacks, that is extremely difficult to do and raises a lot of questions legally and constitutionally. It might be workable to have a policy and enforce it against attacks against employees of the city. But to be perfectly honest, I think trying to restrict attacks against the elected officials in their meeting is a fruitless effort, and I fear that I don't think I could defend any way I can think of how to word something like that, unless of course the speaker makes a physical threat or something of that nature. But merely saying the elected official is bad or something of that nature, it's very difficult to see how you could enforce a rule like that. I think it's
I just want to know, because I don't like personal attacks either. They haven't been on me, but I'm getting to you. You and I know, but everybody else, if they got a question, they don't know. So I don't want it to give the impression that we are, is what I'm trying to say.
I'll be happy to talk to anybody. Unless you want to withdraw or you want to go ahead and vote.
Call the question.
Okay. All in favor of Ronnie's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say like sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Any other business?
No, there's no other business. Anybody have any other business for the good of the
We got a ball game to watch.
Yeah. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.